I do want to make it clear that you are going to struggle sometimes, but you've got to decide, do you want to struggle for yourself, something that you can be able to leave as a legacy for your family, for your children, for your grandchildren, for your nieces, for your nephews, or are you going to struggle? Because keep in mind, a lot of people who work full-time jobs, they're struggling. They're struggling working for someone else. So if I'm going to struggle on my own dime. Okay, that's just me. Okay.
Today's episode of Reset to Reinvent podcast is brought to you by the Adams Group Agency, developing final expense leaders.
Hello, family, and welcome to episode number 18 of Reset to Reinvent podcast. I am your host, Helen Blocker Adams. Oh my goodness, I just marvel at the thought of, wow, we're at episode 18 and where we were a year ago, several years ago, when the idea and the vision of starting this podcast, and here we are. And, I have heard and seen statistics that say, hey, look, the average the podcast, a lot of people don't even make it to podcast number 3. And here we are, podcast number 18. And we're just getting started. I mean, we have had incredible guests, super topics, and we're just getting started. We're just getting started. Okay, starting a podcast is not for the faint of heart. Okay. And actually, I believe starting a podcast is much easier than sustaining it, because you do have to plan, you do have to have guests, or if you want to do solo, you still have to prepare as a solo. And today's episode is me, solo podcaster for today. And so it does take time to put everything together. And so it's not for the faint of heart, just like starting a business, being an entrepreneur. And I know entrepreneurship is a thing. A lot of people want to be entrepreneurs. They want to get out there and spread their wings and do something entrepreneurial. And that's a wonderful thing. I believe in entrepreneurship. Okay. Because check this out. I started my business. I started as an entrepreneur in May of 1991. That's older than some of you listening and watching this podcast. 34 years. Okay, so I started the business. The name of it was HBA, Public Relations and Communications Incorporated. Okay, so, my background at that time was, on-air talk radio. I had hosted and produced a 3-hour, 2-hour, and 3-hour talk radio show. Did that for years. Okay, my background was also in radio sales. I used to work at Foxy 103 Radio here in the Augusta area for years and sold advertising, which was really fun. And of course, my background is in television. I used to produce and host a weekly public affairs show. My background is in newspaper. I did sales, selling advertising, as well as I was a columnist for several newspapers in the Augusta, Georgia area. And then, my experience is public speaking, doing workshops and seminars, and then of course, my undergrad degrees from Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia. Undergrad degree in journalism with emphasis in broadcasting and a minor in political science. So when I thought about in 1991, what's the name of my business, it had to tie in with public relations and communications. And so that's how I came up with HBA, Helen Blocker Adams, my initials, public relations and communications. And, so it just made sense for me to focus my business on marketing, communication, serving the people. Serving the people is what I've been doing as long as I can remember. Okay, serving the people by providing service in marketing, communications, public relations, all of those things as it relates to serving people. Now, if you love something, you love doing something, um, you can still be struggling. And there's one thing about entrepreneurs, anybody that's been in business for any length of time is an entrepreneur, they're going to tell you they've struggled. And so the topic for today's episode is struggling and striving as an entrepreneur. Struggling and striving as an entrepreneur. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. This is going to be a part 1 and part 2 series. Now, that was not the original intent, but I started digging and doing a little bit more research on the whole idea of struggling and striving as an entrepreneur. And then I was shared uh, a sermon from a local Augusta pastor that I thought, you know what, I can incorporate some of those ideas, some of those scripture that just mirrored, parallel what my topic is all about. But that's going to be a part of part 2. Okay, so this is going to end up being part 1 and a part 2 series. But from 1991 to 2014, it was me and God that generated my entire income. Okay. I mean, that was it. Didn't have a full-time job, working anywhere else. It was me and my business. Now, it was in 2014 that I took a job as an adjunct instructor at a Virginia College of Augusta. Okay, and I did that for several years. And so I was an adjunct, which means I was part-time. So in my mind, it was still an entrepreneur, even though I was on a W-2, but I was at the same time doing my insurance business and teaching at the same time. And both of those were my flow of income at that particular time. And so, even with Virginia College, I got a chance to teach not only the courses that I wanted or was able to teach with the degree that I had, but I also got a chance to choose if I wanted to teach 2 courses or 4 courses if they were available based on the number of students that were enrolled for that particular semester. So in my mind, that was still entrepreneurial. Okay, follow my thoughts here. We're talking about being an entrepreneur. And so it's been quite a journey of ups and downs. I mean, think about it. In 34 years, you're bound to have some kind of problems and some kind of challenges and adversities, and struggling and surviving as an entrepreneur became a way of life for me. Okay. It was just what I did. I struggled and survived. I struggled and survived. And so, you know what? When I think back, and every now and then I do think back, especially when I run into someone who has reminded me of an impact that he or she has that I made on their life 10, 20, 15, 30 years ago. And I'm like, wow, I've been at this for a long time. I've been at this for a long time. And so when I think back, I just have to give God the glory. I have to give God the glory and the praise and the honor for pushing me through, pressing me through, helping me get through everything that I have over the years. And it was only Him. Okay, and I may not have realized that at the time. I may not have given Him all the credit at that time. And I give Him that praise and credit now because I get it. Okay, I get it. Because I do remember for a little while, I did get lost in the middle of doing for people and helping people and wanting to please people and all of that, and realize, wait a minute, what about pleasing me, Lord? What about God? So that was a time. There was a period in there where I did get lost. And that's a whole nother topic in itself, because I know I'm not the only one And when I think about the time that I did lose myself in doing stuff and being there for everybody and being somebody for everybody, and not being that somebody for my Lord and Savior, I realized, wow, once it was brought to my attention in a very harsh way in 2014, the mayor's race, that's a whole nother topic for sure. But it got exposed. I mean, my stuff, my raggediness got exposed in a huge way. And but I have no regrets about that. That's all a part of that struggling and striving. It just became a way of life. And so most of the time, while struggling, most people didn't even know it. It's not like I wore it on my sleeve. It's not like I walked around looking downtrodden or looking like I didn't have any money in my account or it was a minus in my bank account. I didn't look that way. Okay. Bills due, bills past due, more month than money, more month than money, more month than money. Anybody feeling me? Oh my gosh. So for periods of times during that 34 years as an entrepreneur, you will go through some stuff. I did go through some stuff. Lord Jesus. As I reflect, I can give you lots and lots of stories. And over a period with this podcast, you're going to hear different stories from me because there's so many, man, I would be talking for hours, all of the challenges that I've had over the past 34 years as an entrepreneur. And but I'm still standing. God says, no, I'm not through with you yet. I am not through with you yet. And so, when I think about this podcast, Reset to Reinvent empowers women to rebuild and thrive after life's toughest challenges through inspiration, guidance, and actionable strategies for resilience. And that is what we're going to do. That is what we will continue to do. We're going to have, whether it's guests or examples, real life people who have gone through stuff, you're going to hear it on this podcast. And so I'm excited that we're on podcast 18. And so when I think about I've had to reset and reinvent myself so many times. It's ridiculous. Oh my gosh. But I've always stayed true to who I am. You got to stay true to who you are. Your heart has to be clean and pure. Serving people is what I've always wanted to do. Now, have I always been able to make the type of income that I needed to survive and thrive? No, I didn't. Sometimes I undercharged myself for activities of different services, and so some of those things took place, but I still stayed in the game, and I always wanted to serve people, even if it meant not getting paid as much as I probably should have or ought to, but I still served the people. I still serve the people. So I've always stayed true to who I am. And then remember earlier, I mentioned that I did get lost for a moment in 2014, and my whole world fell apart during that mayor's race. And that is another topic for another day. And I'm going to get a chance to share that whole experience. But there's a message here. There is a message here today in this episode that I promise it's going to transform some things. It's going to get you thinking a little bit different. And see, when we're talking about struggling and striving as an entrepreneur, it almost sounds like, why would somebody do that? Why would somebody continue to struggle? Because I've always been of the mindset, look, if I've got skills and talents that I can bring to the table, I can do it for myself versus giving all of my skills and talents to someone at a job. That's just always been my mindset. Now, to the dismay of some family members that were like, why don't you get a real job? Why don't you get a real job? Okay. And I heard that a lot over the years, but I wrote an ebook earlier this year. Okay. And it's on the subject matter that resonated with me. And it hit me today as I was preparing for this podcast, this episode. And the name of the ebook, and you can get it right now. Go to my website, reset2reinvent.com. Go to the Reinvent store and order this ebook. I'm telling you, you need this book. You need it today. You need it in a hurry, especially if you're thinking of being an entrepreneur going into business, or you're already in business and you're trying to figure out how to keep going. Mental toughness. Mental toughness. Unlock the secrets of mental resilience and transform yourself into an unstoppable force. The name of my ebook, you can get it right now on my Stand store. Go to reset2reinvent.com. Go to reset2reinvent.com. Okay. And then click on Reinvent store. And that's where you're going to be able to order the book. And you can order that book right now. It's a lot of good stuff in there. Okay. I promise you will not be disappointed. Now I'm going to give you just a few little tidbits, from this book to get you a little curious, so that you want to say, oh no, I got to read more, because I'm not going to give you all of the goodies in this episode. You got to get the book, get the ebook. But let me share with you the table of contents. Okay. So one of the chapters is the entrepreneur's resilience blueprint. Another one is on stress management strategies. Another one is cultivating a positive entrepreneurial mindset. Another one is developing unshakable mental toughness. And then there's a final chapter called Key Takeaways and Next Steps. There are so many. Oh, there's so much good stuff in this book. Oh my goodness. You just cannot believe all of the good stuff that's in this book. And you can get it right now on reset2reinvent.com. Go to the Reinvent store and click there and then order the book. Okay. Order the ebook. Now, there's something that I want to share to get things a little started, to give you a little feel of what this book is all about. And I want to share some thoughts directly from my book. Okay. And just hold tight for me. And so, in the demanding world of entrepreneurship, your mindset is your most valuable asset. Have you ever wondered why some business leaders thrive under pressure while others falter? Okay, there's a reason for that. What makes certain individuals bounce back from setbacks stronger than ever? The answer is mental resilience, a skill that can be developed or just inherited. Okay, and I think I kind of inherited some of these traits that's discussed in this book. Now, I didn't realize it. A lot of times you do things or you go through things, and it's like, and then you read somewhere in some research or in another book, and it's like, oh, so that's what I did. That's what it's called. Okay. Yeah. But this book is going to give you a roadmap. Okay. So I want to share a little bit more. It says you're going to find battle-tested techniques and real-world advice. Some of that real-world advice is going to be from me in this episode. I'm going to share with you all one incident that would just kind of just blow your mind. Oh my goodness! But these are drawn from entrepreneurs who face the same challenges. Okay, through their stories and actionable exercises, you'll learn how to rewire your brain for resilience and implement stress management strategies that work. All of this is in this ebook, guys. Okay. So when you think about it, as an entrepreneur, what does mental toughness look like? What does mental toughness look like? And let me share with you guys a story. Let me share with you one of my struggles. In the late 1990s, I vividly remember, and as I was preparing for, how there's so many things that may happen in our lives, if we haven't journaled it and written it down, a lot of times you just, unless something happens to trigger the incident, you really don't even think about it. It's not anything, and it could have been something good or bad or something traumatic. And when I share this particular incident, I don't want you to think that I'm in any type of stress about it at this particular time. But as I was thinking back with some of the struggles that I had, and I think about mental toughness in this book that I wrote, and when I think about mental toughness and what it means and what it looks like, because some of us may not realize what mental toughness really means. And there is a definite opportunity for you to have possess and develop mental toughness as an entrepreneur, or you're not going to last. Just like starting a podcast is a business, okay? Or what about if you pastor a church? When you start a church and you're starting a ministry, it's still a form of a business. It's an activity. It's a task that you got to start, and you want to keep going. You want to be resilient, and there's going to be some adversities, whether you're starting an organization, whether you're starting a nonprofit organization, whether you're starting a small business. There is a certain level of mental toughness that you have to have. There's no way around it. There's simply no way around it. So when I think back to the late 1990s, I remember I used to organize a lot of conferences, women's leadership conferences, entrepreneurship, small business conferences. And I used to love bringing different groups of people together and bringing them under one roof and having people come and meet them and connect. And I've done that, man, ever since I've been in business. And that's what HBA, public relations and communications, was all about. And so I remember it was in the late 1990s, and I had this big women's conference planned, women's leadership conference. It was sold out. My speaker, I had spoken with my speaker the night before. She had gotten in. I can't even remember who the speaker was at that time, but the event was planned on this particular day. It was a weekday, may have been a Wednesday or Thursday, probably a Thursday. A lot of Thursdays is when I would plan my conferences. And I remember I got all dressed up and I was suited up, and as they call it, suited and booted and smelling good and looking good. And I, wa- I walked out of my apartment, and my car wasn't there. My car wasn't there. I'm like, okay, I always park my car and it was a sports utility. Okay. And I remember the saying to myself, okay, I remember parking it in my usual place. Where is my automobile? Where's my car? Where's my truck? Where's my SUV? And folks, my car was gone. I'm headed to my conference. Now, obviously it was several hours before because I wanted to make sure I was there and get all set up. But my car was not in the parking lot. And I realized, family, my car was repossessed. I'm on my way to this women's leadership conference, and I don't have a car to get there. OMG. Okay, what do I do? What do I do? It was a pretty devastating feeling, to say the least. Okay, we're talking about struggling and striving as an entrepreneur. I'm like, okay, all right, Helen, here's what we got to do. Here's 4 things that I did. Okay. Now we're talking about being able to provide you, actionable steps to get through. Now, I think we can all agree this was a pretty devastating, traumatic situation here, okay? Now, obviously, I knew that I was behind on my car. I may have been just pushing the envelope a little bit too far. I can't remember all of the details, but nevertheless, my car was gone, okay? It was not in the parking lot. I had no way to get to this conference. So here's 4 things that I did. First of all, I didn't panic, okay? I didn't think that my car was stolen, but I do recall, now that I'm thinking about it, I do recall calling the police and saying, I think my car's been stolen. And then they were able to tell me, no, ma'am, your car was not stolen. Your car was picked up. Your car was picked up. Your car was repossessed. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, okay. So I did find that out. I do remember that. And I believe they gave me the name of the company at that point. Okay, this was early in the morning. So what I did, 4 things that I did. I didn't panic. Okay, I did not panic. That was the first thing. I didn't panic. I compartmentalized my thoughts and my actions because I had to think about, I've got a conference to go to. So I can't be stressing about, where the car is at this particular time. I've got to get to this conference because it's already a wrap. The people have already paid their money. I've got to be there. So I had to compartmentalize my thoughts and my actions. Okay. And the third thing I did, I had to stay focused on what was the most pressing. What was the most pressing? Yes, I didn't have an automobile. I didn't have a car to get to where I need to go. And at that particular time, Uber and Lyft, that wasn't a thing back in the late 1990s. Okay. So I'm like, okay. So I had to stay focused on what was most pressing. And what was most pressing was the fact that, you know what? I got to get to this women's conference. And then the 4th thing that I did, I stayed positive. So the 4 steps that I took in the middle of this traumatic. Now, remember when I mentioned, Reset to Reinvent is designed to help people rebuild, after they've experienced, just insurmountable travesty and obstacles. And I think we can all agree this was pretty traumatic. All right. Oh my gosh. So I didn't panic. Number 1, I compartmentalized my thoughts and action. I stayed focused on what was most pressing, and I stayed positive. And you're probably like, how in the world can this woman stay positive in a situation like that? Okay. And I did. I had a mental toughness that I wasn't even aware that I had. I didn't even call it that. I just thrived and struggled as an entrepreneur. It was just something that I did. So I called a friend, told him I was in a bind. I needed a ride to the event. He didn't ask questions. He got there right away. I went to the conference as if nothing was wrong. Nobody knew what had happened. Nobody didn't give any indication that I was struggling, that obviously I was struggling financially, or else they wouldn't have taken my car. Okay. But when we think about what does mental toughness look like, that's mental toughness. That's what mental toughness looked like. Being able to go about my day and take care of what I needed to take care of. Now, a couple of breaks, I did make a phone call and found out, exactly where the car was. And then, the next day I had to deal with that. And I did end up getting that particular car back. They will work with you with the, wherever you get your car from, whoever's financing it. But as part of this episode, as we talk about mental toughness, and we think about the name of the topic of this episode is striving and struggling as an entrepreneur. That's what comes to my mind. That was that's one of many, but I thought that was pulling that out of the hat, and think about it. I'd only been in business maybe less than 10 years. Okay. But, that was a tough situation. So, when you don't have a plan B and you keep going, when you have sold out on your dream of being an entrepreneur, because I remember when I started out, I didn't have a mentor and a coach. How a lot of that's what we hear about. That's the thing. You got people who are mentors and coach and business coaches and life coaches and relationship coaches and all of that and mentors. I didn't have that. Now I have that now. I have a mentor and a coach in the podcast space, and I have a mentor and a coach in the insurance space. But when I started my business, HBA, public relations and communication, it was just me and the Lord. And we were, I knew how to do what I could do. But from a business standpoint, there was a lot of things that I didn't know, but I knew I just believed if I can work for someone else doing XYZ, using my skills, using my education, then I can do it for myself. And as far as I can remember, that's always been my mindset. And so let's look at the definition of striving. Striving, make great efforts to achieve or obtain something. Make great efforts to achieve or obtain something. That's what striving means. And then when we think about the word struggling, striving to achieve or attain something in the face of difficulty or resistance. See how they go hand in hand? So as an entrepreneur, you know what, folks, they go hand in hand. But you got to develop that mental toughness. And so when we think of going into part 2 in next week, I'm going to go and deep dive a little bit more into developing unshakable mental toughness. We're going to cover that more in part 2 of this episode on striving and struggling as an entrepreneur, because they go hand in hand, but the rewards are so great because you're still here, you're still here, you're still thriving. And so here's what I want to do. As we wrap up today's episode, remember, go to my website, reset2reinvent.com, click on Reinvent Store, and go ahead and buy this book. Mental Toughness. I guarantee you it's going to change your life. It is so good. So many good things in there that I want you to grab and be able to hold, because I want you to be a successful entrepreneur. But I do want you to be clear. I do want to make it clear that you are going to struggle sometimes, but you've got to decide, do you want to struggle for yourself? Something that you can be able to leave as a legacy for your family, for your children, for your grandchildren, for your nieces, for your nephews? Or are you going to struggle? Because keep in mind, a lot of people who work full-time jobs, they're struggling. They're struggling working for someone else. So if I'm going to struggle on my own dime. Okay, that's just me. Okay, that's just me. But I want to share with you, I haven't had a chance to share a Helen's Life nugget in a while. So check out this Helen's Life nugget that I wrote January 15, 2015, 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, guys, over 10 years ago. So listen to this as it ties in with our topic for today. Man, I hope this has been helpful for you. I really do. Oh my goodness. Wow. So the enemy had a plan in his playbook. It was to take you out by any means necessary. But you're still here. You're still standing. And now he's perplexed. And your light is shining brighter than ever. The playbook didn't include the power of a mighty God that we serve, who always looks out for and takes care of his children. Claim your victory, but give God all the glory, because he's not through with you yet. This was inspired by a devotional that I read, Psalm 112. So check out Psalm 112, and I pray that it blesses you. Striving and struggling as an entrepreneur. Oh boy. I want to thank you so much for joining today's episode of Reset to Reinvent. Next week, we're going to complete our conversation about struggling and surviving as an entrepreneur, because you can do it. You can do it. I'm a living witness. It's not going to be easy, but boy, it's going to be worth it. Okay? I'm telling you, for real talk. So please subscribe, please download, and please support our podcast. Scroll down to the footer and you can click the link where it says support, a minimum of $3 to, I think, $10 a month. How about supporting our podcast? Share with your friends. Join me as we explore ways to help each other. This podcast is all about you. Why? Because you deserve to be inspired. Peace.
Reset to Reinvent podcast. We are living in uncertain times. Job security is becoming more elusive. People are losing their jobs. Companies are closing. But wait, have you ever considered a career as an insurance agent? Just a thought. Our much talked about ebook, 8 Reasons to Become a Life Insurance Agent, can help you decide if it's for you or not. Order your copy today. Visit our website, Reset to Reinvent, and click on the Reinvent store. Who knows? It may be the best decision you've made in a long time.